Good morning, everybody. And my name is Sam Lundquist. I'm the Vice Dean for External Affairs at the Wharton School. And I'd like to thank everyone for participating in our session today. We're very pleased to be here as representatives of the Wharton School in partnership with the Central Bank of Malaysia and all of the wonderful activities that are happening here in Southeast Asia. It's a real honor and privilege for us to participate in this interesting discussion with you today. Wharton School in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania has alumni that reach around the world. We also attract students from around the world. And we have spent more time now in Southeast Asia than ever before in the history of the school. And so as our activity and participation increases here, we are really honored to be with you today to help convene and facilitate a conversation about investment in this part of the world. And so to lead us with her official welcome, I'd like to introduce to you Dr. Zeti, Governor of the Central Bank of Malaysia, and also a proud alumna of the University of Pennsylvania, where she earned her doctorate in economics with a specialty in monetary economics. Dr. Zeti.
Well, thank you very much. I'm delighted to welcome all of you to Kuala Lumpur. Many of you come as far away from the United States, from Philadelphia, and Bank Negara Malaysia is really delighted to host this panel dialogue session, and also the Asian Executive Board meeting that will be held, the Wharton Executive Board meeting for Asia that will be held this afternoon. We have therefore taken the opportunity to jointly organize this panel dialogue, given the presence of the Asian Executive Board members, the Wharton faculty, a number of whom are here today, and then the Wharton alumni. And of course, we're very happy to have been able to invite some of the senior management of the financial services industry and our economy. And of course, we have some members of the media here as well. Now, this topic on growth opportunities in Southeast Asia, I just did want to say that Asia is made up of highly diverse economies, and we have three very large economies, that is China, India, and China, Japan, and India. And we have two developed economies, that is Japan and Korea. And we have two city-states that are international financial centers, that is Hong Kong and Singapore. And then the Southeast Asian economies, there are 10 of us in ASEAN. And our population is more than 500 million, and the size of the collective group of economies of ASEAN is actually larger than the Indian economy. So very often we do not get recognized that we are actually, ASEAN is a force to be reckoned with. And so we are delighted to have this opportunity to get ourselves also better known, and for us within the group also to recognize that collectively we are an important group of countries within Asia and I think in the global economy. And I wanted to make 3 points about ASEAN very quickly. One is that we are trending towards greater economic and financial integration. And this is a very important trend. Like 50% of our trade is with each other. For Malaysia, 60% of our trade is with Asia. And financial integration is also progressing very rapidly. Asia, however, is also, the second point is that we are also integrating with the greater Asia, that is with the other countries of China, Japan, and India, and other parts of Asia. And the third point that I wanted to make about ASEAN is that we lived through a financial crisis and in the late 1990s. And it was thought at that time, there were many write-ups, that it would be a lost decade. Well, we showed the rest of the world that it wasn't. Most of us recovered from the crises within 1.5 years. That is 1.5 years from the start of the crises. Most of us had a V-shaped recovery within 2 years. And the final point that I want to make about ASEAN in this context is that we took actions on the lessons that we learned from the crises. That is the financial restructuring and reforms and the economic restructuring and reforms. All of it was accelerated, and this therefore placed us, because of the payoffs from this, it placed us with a high degree of resilience during this current global financial crises. Now, finally, I just want to say one thing about this building. This building where we're having this event, it belongs to the central bank. We built it for the purpose of putting our learning and knowledge center, that is capacity building for our own central bankers. We have almost 3,000 workforce, and we believe in capacity building. And I had just mentioned that within the central bank, we have prepared for the next generation of leadership within the bank, for the next, not only for the next generation, but the subsequent generations, for 2 generations. So then we have in this building 2 entities, one an international organization called IFSB, Islamic Financial Services Board. And this entity is similar to the BIS in Basel. They also have a Basel committee. This entity sets prudential standards for Islamic finance, and but much more than just banking. It sets for insurance as well as for capital market intermediaries. The second entity is a regional entity. It is the CSEN Center. It is capacity building for the central banks of the Asian region, and there are 17 central banks, or 18 central banks that are members of this, including China and India and Korea, who are members. It started off as Southeast Asia, but it was expanded. So we would invite our guests from overseas to visit these entities. Also in this building is our art gallery and museum, which we hope you will have a chance to also visit during your stay here. Now, the name of this building is Khazanah Kijang, and Sasana means a Sanskrit word, and it is a meeting place for the wise. And so we thought it was very apt to call this building Khazanah Kijang. And for us, it is to be a center for thought leadership and regional and international collaboration in central banking and finance. So that is where the motivation for putting this building, which is now 1.5 years old. So this is all that I wanted to say at the start, and I wish the dialogue every success, and we hope that you will also, for our foreign guests, enjoy the Kuala Lumpur experience as well. So with that, I'd like to invite Dr. Habir Singh. He's the Vice Dean for Global Affairs, and he's also a member of the Wharton School faculty. So he will be the facilitator and moderator of this dialogue. And so please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zeti, for your... Thank you very much, Dr. Zeti, for your great hospitality and also your great engagement with the Wharton School. It's a matter of great pride that one of our esteemed graduates with a doctorate in economics has gone on to make such a dramatic impact on one of the major economies in the world. And so it is, in fact, wonderful that we are here today to celebrate this success. I also want to welcome our Wharton Asia board members who are here today, our alumni, and also members of the financial services community who are present to attend this dialogue. As Dr. Zeti was saying, the Southeast Asia is a cauldron of great opportunity, but it's also highly diverse, and it's got such a broad footprint that we clearly cannot do justice to the entire range of topics and opportunities it presents. However, we have a board of a set of panelists here who have deep expertise in many of these domains, and so I'm looking forward to a wonderful discussion. What I'm going to do is, I just wanted to also make some opening remarks about Southeast Asia just for 2 or 3 minutes, and then I plan to introduce our panelists, each of whom will speak for maybe 10 minutes, and then we will have some interactive discussion amongst them and with the audience. As Dr. Zeti was saying, we are witnessing, we're in the midst of what might be considered a sea change in the global economy. We are seeing a much higher degree of interdependence than we ever did before. Some of that interdependence comes from new technologies that have allowed companies to access assets, physical assets and human capital around the world. And many, many companies have changed their footprints to access these assets. And naturally, in parallel, we need to have changes in policies, and Dr. Zeti referred to some of them, which is to think about interdependence between economies and how can the political instruments and how can decisions on international trade help this economic betterment, as it were, for the world. At the same time, there are local interests that might have a different set of agendas. So I think this tension is something that we are seeing playing out today and will continue to see playing out. With the financial crisis in the US, up to starting from 2008, and then some of the challenges in Europe that we've seen in the last few years, a lot of capital has directed itself to Southeast Asia. And I think the interesting question is, what are the long-term economic opportunities as this capital continues to flow? There are demographic benefits in this part of the world. There are some benefits of factor costs, but there are also some challenges. And so one of the issues that perhaps we can address is corporate governance and investor protection. And it's very interesting that Malaysia is ranked very high on corporate investor protection by the World Economic Forum. So I think that's an area, as more capital flows, the importance of transparency, the importance of corporate governance. And then I think the other issue that's interesting that we might talk about is the role of supply chains, global supply chains, as they begin to develop across boundaries, and the sheer economic dependence that those supply chains generate in the corporations that have actually made those long-term investments. So on one hand, people say the earth is flat, but it actually may not be that flat, because for a particular corporation, if you have a lot of assets in Vietnam, you have assets in Vietnam, and migrating them is not so easy. So there's a economic level of analysis, and then there is a firm level of analysis. And I think there's some very interesting issues there. So with those opening sort of issues, I would like to introduce our panelists. We have a wonderful panel, and please hold your applause until I talk about all four. On my left here, Mr. Chantol Sun, Chairman of the Wharton Executive Board of Asia, Senior Minister and Vice Chairman for the Council of Development of Cambodia. He was also a global leader of tomorrow in the World Economic Forum in 1995. He has degrees from American University, Harvard, and Wharton, and 16 years of experience with GE. So Chantol, welcome, and thank you for taking the time to join us. And then further to my left, Dato Sri Abdul Wahid Omar, President and CEO of Maybank since May 2008, and Group CEO of Telecom Malaysia Berhad from 2004 to 2008. and also chairman of the Association of Banks of Malaysia. Mr. Wahid, welcome as well. And then on my immediate right here, Tan Sri Azman bin Mukhtar, MD Khazanah National since 2004, and also formerly of UBS and Solomon Smith Barney, fellow of the Association of Chartered Accountants of the UK, and originally did his education in the International Islamic University. Welcome, Mr. Azman. And then further to my right, Dr. Kankiat Opaswangkan, who is a PhD from the Wharton School in Operations Research, applied mathematics mostly, but also a member of the Wharton Executive Board of Asia, CEO of Asia Plus Securities, and former CEO of Exim Bank of Thailand. Dr. Kankiat, welcome as well. So please join me in applauding our distinguished panel. We have, as you can see, deep expertise, and I'm going to turn now to Shantol for his remarks on investment opportunities in Southeast Asia.
Thank you very much. Good morning. First of all, allow me to join Sam to express our appreciation to Governor Zeti for hosting this event today. I think today we live in the region that is very exciting. So the ASEAN that Dr. Zeti talked a while ago is a very dynamic region with a population close to 600 million people. So if a standalone country, ASEAN would rank third in terms of population, just behind China and India, with a combined GDP of over $2 trillion US. So if a standalone country again, ASEAN would rank 9 in terms of the largest economy in the world. ASEAN also signs various free trade agreements with China, with Korea, with Japan, with India, with Australia, with New Zealand. So if we look at these GDP of those countries that we signed the FTA with, we talk about the GDP of $20 trillion US, that between ASEAN, China, Korea, Japan, India, Australia, and New Zealand. So this is very big, dynamic, and create a massive opportunity for the private sector, big and small. Not only is a big company can benefit, but a small company also can benefit from the ASEAN community. The leaders of ASEAN has adopted the ASEAN Charter that will create the ASEAN community by 2015. So Dr. Zeti mentioned about the ASEAN Economic Community, so that will be formalized by 2015. But in order to realize the ASEAN community by 2015, the ASEAN leaders also adopted what we call the master plan on ASEAN connectivity. Without this master plan on ASEAN connectivity, we cannot integrate ASEAN together. We cannot benefit from the ASEAN as a community. So this ASEAN master plan on connectivity will enhance the competitiveness of ASEAN, will promote economic growth for our region, will narrow the development gap between the old members of ASEAN, the 6 countries, and the new members. New member is CLMV, Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, and Vietnam. So this ASEAN master plan will help integrate the old and the new members. To implement the ASEAN master plan on connectivity, it will require approximately $60 billion US to develop infrastructure. So when we talk about the connectivity, we talk about physical connectivity, we talk about institutional connectivity, we talk about people-to-people connectivity. ASEAN leaders always implement the ASEAN Infrastructure Fund of $485 million US to kickstart the development of infrastructure. But it will require $60 billion US a year. However, the ASEAN member state cannot or do not have the sufficient resource to go and implement all this infrastructure need. we need the private sector. So I'm very pleased that we have the private sector community in this discussion. So the opportunity is there for the private sector to participate in the infrastructure development in ASEAN. We need, the government of ASEAN need to present the bankable project, if you will, to the private sector. Because the private sector needs a bankable project in order to go and invest in this infrastructure project on a PPP basis, public-private participation, on a BOT basis, on a BOO. But the government of a new member state, the CLMV, Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, and Vietnam, do not have the expertise to prepare the bankable project. So I urge the private sector to take an active role, proactive role, to engage with the Cambodian government, with Laos, Vietnam, Myanmar, and prepare a bankable project yourself. Submit to the government of Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, and Vietnam in order to get the approval. Without bankable project, and we don't have the expertise to prepare that bankable project. So the private sector needs to take the proactive role to do that. Now, there's 15 priority projects identified in the master plan. So I also urge you to please take a look, try to get this book, the master plan on ASEAN connectivity, that lists all the projects that need to be implemented in this book. So there's an opportunity for private sector to do that. One of the flagship projects is Singapore Kunming Railing Project that will connect Singapore to Malaysia, to Thailand, to Cambodia, to Vietnam, and to China. This is part of the Singapore Kunming Railing Project. India also just announced the building of the new highway from India to Myanmar, to Thailand, to Laos, to Vietnam, to Cambodia. So just Singapore Kunming Railing Project plus the highway from India, it will bring 2.6 billion consumers to ASEAN, in addition to 600 million consumers in ASEAN. So the opportunity is huge for the private sector. So there's good reason for the private sector to really invest in ASEAN. Now, for me, as a vice chair of the investment board at CDC, I wouldn't do a service to Cambodia if I don't share with you the investment opportunity in my country. Cambodia is small. They have only 14 million consumers in Cambodia, but we are in the center of gravity of Southeast Asia. Within 2-hour flying time, we can reach 600 million consumers. Political in Cambodia is very stable. We're going to have an election in July this year, and likely the ruling party will continue to form the government after the election. Macroeconomic situation very stable, low inflation rate, less than 5% per annum. GDP growth 7% last year, 9.4 the last decade, 9.4 growth in Cambodia, and we expect the GDP to grow 6 to 7% in the medium term. Our debt to GDP ratio is very low, 30%. I think the US, a European country, would love to have this debt to GDP ratio of 30%. But Cambodia, 30%, with low trade deficit. So with potential is there in a country. The labor is abundant in a country. We also provide very generous investment incentives. The corporate income tax in Cambodia, 20%. Payroll tax, also maximum 20% in Cambodia. There's no exchange control in Cambodia. You can transfer the money in, you can take it out. We have the president of Maybank who in Cambodia can testify to that. There's no restriction on ownership. You can invest 100% in Cambodia. In every economic sector is open. Tell me which country in ASEAN or the world that allow foreigner to own 100% banking license, to own 100% telecom sector, to own 100% of insurance industry, to participate in agro industry in Cambodia. It's very open economy. So I urge all of you to please visit us. Our door is open to review application, to provide you with information, to approve your investment. Because the Cambodian government is so committed to rebuild the country, to make the standard of living of our people better. But we cannot do it alone. We need a private sector. So together, between the private sector, Cambodian government, we can build a better future for Cambodia and be a better future for ASEAN. Thank you.
Thank you, Shantol, for a wonderful overview, both of ASEAN and Cambodia's specific opportunities. Let me now ask Wahid to introduce his remarks.
Thank you, Professor. Vice Dean Lindquist, Governor Tan Sri Zeti, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and a very good morning. It is indeed an honor for me to be invited on this panel. Allow me to speak from the perspectives of Maybank and the financial services industry. Now, by way of a quick introduction, Maybank is Malaysia's largest financial services group with total assets exceeding $150 billion. We are Malaysia's most valuable company listed on Bursa Malaysia with a market capitalization of $25 billion. And apart from Malaysia, where we have the widest distribution network, both physical and virtual, we regard Singapore, Indonesia, Philippines, Cambodia, and other ASEAN countries as our home market. Now, speaking of Cambodia, we already have 12 branches, and with your permission, Excellencies, we'd like to grow to 20 soon. Now, in fact, Maybank is one of the top ASEAN banks with the widest presence across the 10 ASEAN countries. 36% of our operations are now outside of Malaysia, contributing some 30% to group profit. Now, so much has been said about the prospects of ASEAN as an integrated economy, but I believe it is worth repeating. With 600 million people, relatively young population, GDP of $2 trillion as mentioned by Excellency, and growing 5 to 6% per annum in the past decade, and expected to do so moving forward. ASEAN's future is certainly very bright. Another aspect of ASEAN that is often overlooked is the fact that ASEAN countries collectively have sufficient financial resources with aggregate foreign reserves exceeding some $800 billion. And ASEAN countries also have sound financial system to fund its economic growth. Now, allow me to cover 3 areas in my short intervention. Firstly, on why I believe the ASEAN integration will work better this time. Secondly, on the need for more ASEAN-based regional banks. And third, on the moves for greater financial linkages to fund, in the capital market. Now, speaking of integration, the ASEAN integration process was essentially kick-started by the AFTA, the ASEAN Free Trade Agreement, back in 1992 to promote trade and investment, essentially in physical goods and manufacturing. Now, the progress, however, to me wasn't that convincing. If you looked at the data, the intra-ASEAN trade as a percentage of ASEAN total trade rose only slightly from 20% back in 1995 to 26% in 2011. Now, that means it is only a 6 percentage points increase over a period of 16 years. Now, at the same time, intra-ASEAN foreign direct investments, or FDI, accounts for only 13% of the total net FDI into ASEAN during the 10-year period from 2000 to 2010. Now, this implies that there are limited gains from the limited integration via AFTA. But with the ASEAN Economic Community 2015, however, we believe that it is going to be different. Now, it is premised on freer flows of not only goods, but financial and non-financial services, investments, financial capital, and also very important, human capital. Now, although there's been some doubts whether the AEC 2015 will materialize come January 2015, the various ASEAN leaders have reiterated their commitment to see through this initiative. Now, I was in Bangkok on Friday, had the benefit of meeting up with Kun Kitrat, the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance of Thailand. And him, like other ministers of finance, other ASEAN government had reiterated commitment to proceed forthwith with AEC 2015. Now, having said that, there are still some doubts whether it will be implemented in full strength. To my mind, even if implementation is not in January, but at the end of December 2015, and even if only 80% of the plans are actually implemented, I believe the ASEAN AEC 2015 is poised for success. Now, the AEC 2015, I believe, has all the benefits of a common market without the pitfalls of the common currency, as we saw in the case of the EU. Now, on the second point, in order to facilitate greater ASEAN integration, it is important for ASEAN to be served by a number of well-networked, well-capitalized, and well-managed regional banks. It is within this context that Maybank has set our vision of being a regional financial services leader come 2015. Now, the idea here is that as ASEAN becomes more integrated and as our customers expand their operations across the region, the bankers similarly will need to follow the customers in order to remain relevant. Now, we at Maybank, we are not alone in this journey. Our fellow Malaysian bankers, CIMB, Public Bank, are also expanding across the region. And likewise, the three Singapore banks and Bangkok Bank, although they're also there. Now, it is our hope that other banks from Indonesia and Philippines will follow suit. Now, the Asian financial crisis of 1997-98 and the more recent global financial crisis have demonstrated the need for more local and regional banks to provide the stability in the domestic financial system, given the experience of foreign banks retreating from these markets in times of crisis. Now, it is within this context that we certainly welcome the ASEAN Central Bank's initiative to create the ASEAN Banking Integration Framework to facilitate the creation of more ASEAN-based banking groups ahead of AEC 2015. Now, Governor Zeti is certainly one of the principal person behind this move. The third area concerns the moves for greater financial linkages in the capital market. 2012 has proven to be a great year for the Malaysian capital market. We had some 17 IPOs undertaken, raising some $7 billion, making Malaysia as the fourth largest IPO market in the world. Obviously, we had the benefit of the three mega IPOs of Philda Global Ventures. We had IHH Healthcare, very much championed by Tan Sri Azman here. And also we had Astro. Now, I think it does work well. And apart from promoting the individual exchanges, there are moves toward greater financial linkages and integration. And one such initiative is the ASEAN exchanges, involving 7 stock exchanges from 6 ASEAN countries. You must be wondering why we have 7 and 6 countries. That's because in Vietnam there are 2 stock exchanges. Now, apart from promoting, the first ASEAN roadshow that was launched in Bangkok 2 days ago with a view to encourage more retail investors to invest in quality companies in other ASEAN countries. And this will be followed in Singapore and in Malaysia. It's quite interesting in the sense that in Bangkok, one of the most popular companies in Thailand is Thai Beverage, but they're not listed in Bangkok itself due to some constraints, but they were listed in Singapore. So with these ASEAN exchanges, it will facilitate the retail investors from Thailand to invest in their favorite Thai company, Thai Beverage. Now, in the case of Maybank, we were one of the Malaysian companies showcased. Now, there are other moves to facilitate greater financial linkages, including common disclosure standards for cross-listing and regional framework for secondary listing. Now, before I end my intervention, allow me to state that the Malaysian banking system is in great shape. Our banks are well capitalized with industry capital adequacy ratio at 15.3%, and our asset quality continued to improve with our net impaired loans ratio at a very low level of 1.41%. And I think more importantly is to note that the banks in Malaysia continue to play our part in mobilizing deposits to be channeled to the productive sectors of the economy. We've seen for 2012, our loans growth as an industry is at 11.2% up to November 2012. Now, some of you may be wondering why this is so. This shouldn't be surprising given the fact that we have, among others, very effective regulators, world-class regulators, and one of them is actually a product of Wharton. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Singh. Ladies and gentlemen, Governor Zeti, Assalamualaikum, peace be upon you, welcome to KL. If I could also join the welcomes. The last time, I think, I was looking through my notes over the weekend, I was invited to speak at the Wharton event, and she was in Singapore. I think it was 2005. I'm not sure whether Charles Sang is in the audience. Conferry. Charles, sorry, you invited me. I'm so sorry, it's been a while. And the topic was actually, it was in Singapore, and the topic was actually about investing in Southeast Asia as well. You know, roughly. So remember, the setting was 2005, it was in Singapore, and this was before the big global crisis, etc. So at the end of a session like this, all the panelists, we were asked to rate from 0 to 10, what do you think about investing in Southeast Asia? I think the average was about 7. So this is what I showed actually, Governor. It was so if I was 8 in 2005, I think it should be like this now, which is actually infinite possibilities. But I have to, now I can share because I thought this was a closed-door event, Governor, but as I was coming in, I was accosted by some members of the press because some of them wrote about Khazanah in the newspapers this morning, and I have to be on my best behavior because my regulator is right in front of me now. And so I'm not going to tell you anything, but I can tell you that in 2005, in the audience were some people from Khazanah, as well as some people who were working on the transaction in 2005. Those of you who know, I don't know whether there's colleagues, I'm sure there are some from Indonesia, this is actually the logo of the Lipo Group. So I think Mirza knows this. So while it was an 8, my little in-joke with some parts, very small part of the audience, Governor, was that I think a few weeks later, actually, we announced the acquisition of Bank Lipo, which has subsequently become CIMB Niaga. So today I'll be on my best behavior, no games. I think a lot has been said. If I can just add 3 key points. One, I think I tried to make already, which is ASEAN was looking good in 2005. It's looking even better today, at least in relative terms. That may not be saying much because of what's happening in Europe, in some of the more developed economies, the slowdown, the managed slowdown, I should add, in China. I think some of the issues that our Indian colleagues are facing in both the public and private sectors, perhaps geopolitical risks in the Middle East and so on and so forth. So that's the first point. I think we can go down in a little bit more detail. But perhaps in the Wharton spirit of inquiry and challenge, let's talk about challenges as well, because I think it's obviously not all rosy, which I'll cover in a while. And I thought I should end my 10 minutes by talking about some specific examples of business models or business cases. I think perhaps that's our contribution. Khazanah is the sovereign fund of Malaysia, one of the sovereign funds, there's several actually. And we are active shareholders. Our investment style is like private equity, but obviously being sovereign, we basically try to do 2 things: make money. Thankfully, we've done that, we think. And secondly, create an impact in terms of economic and social utility, if you like, jobs, knowledge, linkages, and so on and so forth. So I will end on some specific examples. ASEAN looking relatively good, 600 million, 2015, good geography, young, middle class. I think, a nice mix in the economy's resources, strong financial systems. I think this, this cannot be underestimated, not just the 800 million, but if you look from both the asset and liability side, I think the capacity to fund, so not 800 million, 800 billion of reserves, but if you look at balance sheets at all levels, strong and so on and so forth. So I think that all that is quite clear. Cultural diversity is something, especially those perhaps less familiar with ASEAN need to understand. So I was just chatting with Kong Kiat just now. Maybe this is a good, summary for ASEAN. You have in Thailand, principally Buddhist country, you can't list a beverage, a beer company. But in Malaysia, you can list one of the world's largest gaming companies, Genting. So try to figure that out. I think there's a lot of reasons for cultural diversity and our very pragmatic approach to doing things. I would say that ASEAN success, I mean, you look at the numbers, the last 20, 30 years, some of the most dynamic economies have been rates of growth, I believe it was averaging about 5.5%, Excellency, and further out and so on and so forth. So all that, I think that case has been made clear. Let's talk a little bit about the challenges. The first challenge, I think, if God had intended this to be one whole contiguous region, he would have made it one whole contiguous region. We are not. We are an archipelagic economy, or rather region, if you like, and hence, different countries, cultural diversity, different religions, etc. But God did give us good geography. If you talk about connectivity, I think one of the largest overseas Chinese communities, very entrepreneurial, is in Southeast Asia. I think doing very well, and this is 45 million, 50 million. I think this is, very clearly a good linkage and doing very well into China. Malaysia alone, for example, one of the largest communities of Indian origin, for example, is in Malaysia itself, as well as in Singapore and other parts of ASEAN. I think our familiarity, openness, linkage to places like Middle East and the West, for example. I think the West all the way from the spice trade in the 500-600 years ago to multinationals today from America or from Japan, from everywhere. I think this is a region that has absorbed, the trading winds have all passed through here. But that diversity and archipelago does create fragmentation. It does, I think a famous study by McKinsey, I believe, maybe perhaps about 10 years ago, said a bar of soap, for example, supposed to weigh the same thing, has the same size, is completely different in several ASEAN countries. So you talk about standards and so on and so forth. I think there's moves towards integration, but it's not there yet. I believe although ASEAN Economic Community has been put up, but the origins of ASEAN itself was really geopolitical in nature. I think this came out of the Cold War era. I think there was this wonderful acronym, ZOPFAN, some of us may remember, Zone of Peace, Freedom and Neutrality, at the time when the domino theory was one of the fashionable theories at that time. But I think the ASEAN way and ASEAN consensus, to some may seem like this is very slow, this is going to take forever, etc. But it is a consensus, and it is a region that is peaceful, that has strong political stability overall in all the regions and how we work with each other. So to me, the challenges are there, but it is certainly surmountable. And finally, specific examples. I think I can talk from, in addition to like Maybank, I think Malaysian companies embarked on this journey. I think 15 years ago we had the Asian crisis, as Governor and others have highlighted. I think we took that on the chin, and I think we've gone into the gym, whether it's corporate governance, banking consolidation, Islamic finance, real finance, and other things. I think this has not just Malaysia, but indeed the region. I think there's been changes in political systems, maturing of this. I think Indonesia, in particular, I think has seen a major upheaval. But even our friends in Singapore is going through this, which I think is overall a good sign and part of the maturing process. But really, whatever is happening at the macro side, at the institutional side, on places like ASEAN and so on and so forth, business to business, or funds to funds kind of movement have already moved significantly ahead of the curve. And Malaysia, while we believe we've been a successful country, we are basically a medium-sized company and medium-sized economy. And to build scale and relevance is actually to go regional. And Maybank is one good example for that. Myself and Wahid, we work closely on telecom when he was the CEO and Khazanah as the major shareholder. A lot of that work has now manifested itself in a company called Axiata, which is our mobile phone company. We are a country of 28, 29 million people, but Axiata today touches more than 220 million subscribers in 9 countries around the region, including ASEAN principally. That's one example. I think we built this company called IHH, Integrated Healthcare, which is now the world's second largest healthcare company, certainly the fastest growing. So within 3 years, who knows, 3 to 5 years, although being largest, not necessarily important, as Wharton would tell you, but certainly being most dynamic is important. Principally, the base markets are Singapore, Malaysia, India to an extent, and Turkey. I think it's gone beyond ASEAN, but the connectivity to ASEAN is very strong. And then you have CIMB, of course, our flagship financial institution. Is part of that story. Genting is there, certainly not it's a Malaysian company, but AirAsia, I think, is very successfully built on the low-cost model, and the fact that travel in an archipelagic region, I think, is very important. So I think all that is clear. I think Excellency spoke about the need for transportation links, and on top of that, an energy grid, for example. This is where, again, if you believe that diversity is a strength, but that fragmentation is also a challenge. So how do you bring things together, whether it's financial integration, physical integration, energy integration, I think is a challenge. And you could restate the issue as one, essentially, of a collective action problem that you need to basically put together. We, in the private sector, we need business cases that work. And if that happens, then the bankers will decide whether they want to fund this or not. The politicians and those running multilateral organizations need to get, basically the highways ready, the institutional highways ready to get this done. It's getting there, guys. And we are getting, investments and collaboration. And this is the other thing. This is a collaboration region. This is a region that has done business with the rest of the world for a long, long time. It's always practiced a prosper thy neighbor and prosper thy partner policy. And this is all of it. So we've not just been blessed with the geography, but with the history as well. So I'll end with 3 examples of the challenge, I think. One, already spoken about, an energy and transport grid. We heard about the CMLV countries, which brings to the second part. I think it's not realistic, nor even desirable, to have throughout the 10 countries, development that is like all the same and so on and so forth. It's not realistic, nor even desirable. I think the Excellency and others has talked about supply chains. And I think this is another feature of ASEAN, is that fragmentation or that differences means there is a case for complementarities. Okay, the notion of, we've heard people talk about competitive advantage and comparative advantage. I'd like to introduce the notion of complementary advantage. The fact that you have different endowments and different circumstances obviously pushes you to actually work together. And in that regard, I think ASEAN, if you take the example of Malaysia and Singapore is a good example. I think this is Khazanah's interest, but also Malaysia's interest. I think we've been developing for the last 5-6 years a special economic zone called Iskandar. This is in the southern tip of Malaysia, facing Singapore. Today, this is embraced by the Singaporeans, but also by our partners from North Asia, for example, from Japan. Post-Fukushima, I think they've come in and felt that, okay, we need to relocate some stuff into Southeast Asia, and they saw this as a hub. So the second big idea, if you like, or the second proposal is really the notion of hubs and spokes within ASEAN, because you can't have everything trying to be a hub. And indeed, what we see is that there's a northern kind of a hub evolving around Bangkok. You see the axis between Myanmar all the way to Vietnam via Cambodia. A road is being built, a very major road, with the opening of Myanmar. And up north towards Kunming in China, and perhaps all the way down. And Bangkok is at the epicenter of this northern hub, if you like. I think we see this very clearly, and our companies are working with our Thai partners in that regard. Second hub is really in the Malaysia-Singapore kind of a hub. I think the Malaysian government has announced, for example, within the next few years, the building of a high-speed rail from Malaysia to Singapore. I think clearly this will need to go through all kinds of public reviews and so on and so forth. But I think the thinking is really, again, that complementarity. And the third one is really the more archipelagic ASEAN, whether that's Philippines or Indonesia in particular, which is a large, very large country going through 3 time zones. And Jakarta itself is a huge and very dynamic area. So really to develop that and develop that well. And I should end, I am not a supporter of Manchester United Football Club nor Liverpool FC. I think they had a big game last night. And I know those.
So you know which political debates to avoid.
Well, what I wanted to say is that the region that is the most crazy about football is actually ASEAN. And then you can compound that by saying the region that is most crazy, and I'm afraid, Governor, we need to improve our football. We're not very good at football because our best ranking team, I think, is Thailand, 107 or something like that. You know, so the biggest, if you do a spread analysis, the largest spread between interest in football and how good you are at football is actually ASEAN. So perhaps this is my favorite pet idea, Governor. I've been saying this on ASEAN forums. Nobody's taken this up yet, but maybe the illustrious alumni of Wharton can do this. There is no way any of ASEAN countries will get the World Cup on our own because we're just not good enough, you know, unless I have only one son, and you know, if I keep pumping steroids, he's 14 years old, and then stop maybe in 10 years' time, maybe we'll get there, but you know, this is technically illegal, right? So, let alone about child abuse, so we won't go there. So therefore, I think we should do this together. Maybe 4 core countries, but the other countries. So imagine 8 groups, 4 countries, 2 groups per country. There's no way FIFA is going to give us 4 teams. 1 year before, we slug it out among ourselves. The top 2 goes through. Number 3 can host a final. Number 4 hosts opening ceremony and so on. It's much cheaper. From Thailand, from Bangkok to Jakarta, is a 3 hours flight, etc. So imagine Malaysian fans may support a Thai team in the second round, etc., etc. How wonderful would that be? So I better end there. Thank you.
Central Bank Governor, distinguished board members, ladies and gentlemen. Well, talking about football, actually, I just want to add that there's one particular Thai company that just recently announced that they would spend about $500 million to pay for the right to broadcast English football for the next 3 years. That's a lot of money. I think if ASEAN can get together and make a big bargain, then probably, we probably can buy a soccer team.
Malaysia has at least 3.
I think in the past several years, we at ASEAN have learned a lot from our previous mistake. At the same time, the West also learned from our mistake in 1997. The prescription given to us by IMF after 1997 was that we had to shut down several financial companies, banks, and that at the same time jack up interest rates. And I also remember a word, moral hazard, meaning that debtors were not allowed to buy back their own assets. But I think, of course, this solution is no longer adopted after 2008 Lehman crisis, when they detected that this prescription is a bit poisonous. They decided to do the opposite way, and that is keep interest rates very low, pumping liquidity, and make sure that all the leading financial institutions stay alive and do their financial services to the business sectors. I think we have learned a lot of hard ways, and I think it is a good example for us to realize that we have come a long way and strengthened ourselves. My conclusion is that we have a very rosy outlook ahead of us. I agree with all the panelists that if we can stick together, all the 10 members amongst ASEAN with 600 million population, we have a lot of bargaining power. The other thing that I observe is that so far, several countries have been quite slow in terms of adopting some of the criteria initiated. The latest research showed that 70% of the members, 74% were adopted so far, not 100%, and that need to be accelerated. There are certain issues that need to be discussed, for instance, on non-tariff barrier, etc. But from my experience as an investment banker in the past 25 years, I can observe that this year is a very exciting year, and we are going to have a very exciting years ahead of us. Last year, I think the turning point was in third quarter, when all the economic indicators started to point north. China starts to rebound. The stock market basically has collapsed from over 6,100 on the Shanghai index down to below 2,000 and started to rebound. US actually was in the recovery stage. Of course, Europe is not doing quite well, but it will probably stay alive for quite a long time in the intensive care unit. Southeast Asia had a lot to demonstrate. We have interesting deals ahead of us. For instance, I was just talking to Asman that this year we probably have very busy year ahead of us. We start hiring more investment bankers. I think this is something unheard of in the Western world. In December last year, we hired 8 new bankers, and in January this year, we start hiring 10 more, using all sort of headhunters, because we are running out of manpower to execute deals from domestic as well as from overseas. We have a large number of IPOs in the pipelines waiting to be executed, private equity and so on. Last year, I think it was the first year that we started to see colossal number of deals flowing into the bond markets. 2 years ago, we tried to raise debt for junk companies, junk status basically, which was normally it was impossible. But I think we managed to be quite successful in raising bonds for those companies. We start to execute some deals for Chinese companies waiting to get listed in Thailand, believe it or not. I think with the changing regulation that allow overseas companies to get listed in Thailand starting from this year, our investment bankers have been quite busy, staying in 4 different cities in China today, trying to close some of the deals. Of course, we have to tell several of them to wait because we have no manpower. I think with the kind of deal that we start to witness, I can sense that the whole area is roaring. There are plenty of opportunities out there. I spoke to Keisuke this morning about the opportunities that Thailand will benefit from the dispute between China and Japan. Immediately, we see a large number of Japanese firms flooding into the Thai market. Of course, right now there are over 7,000 Japanese firms having their establishment in Thailand. They have plants, they have factories and so on, but more will come. And that would benefit industrial estate sector. So we start to see some of these companies buying additional raw land in anticipation of capacity expansion. Retail sector is also one sector that benefit immensely from the growing size of population within this region. When we talk about ASEAN, we do not talk about Thailand alone. Thailand only has 67 million population, which is only 10% of the total population within ASEAN group. Business, particularly bigger business, always look at bigger market. They always look at not only ASEAN markets, but also try to expand into Europe and US whenever they can. I have to say that several large Thai conglomerates have prepared themselves for global integration and expansion 3-4 years ago when we started helping a large Thai auto parts company to acquire a well-known Japanese auto parts firms when that company went to debt restructuring. And then we start to see larger companies following the same suit. We see companies like Thai Union Frozen becoming the largest canned tuna company in the world. We start to see companies like Indorama becoming one of the largest petrochemical-related companies in the world, stuff like that. Things that unheard of 10 years ago. So I see huge opportunities, not only in various sectors, but I want to emphasize a little bit on the retail sector from my investment banking point of view. There have been a lot of talk about expanding along the borderline, border trade, very good example. When Myanmar opened up, of course, it's a bit risky at the initial stage for foreign companies to start their manufacturing base there because of power shortage, regulation, uncertainty, high property price, stuff like that. So it makes a lot of sense to have their manufacturing base situated along the border, particularly in Thailand. Land price starts soaring like never before. Yeah, probably gone up 5 times in the past couple of years. I spoke to the largest home products owner the other day, like similar to Home Depot in the US. The guy said that sales of one particular store in the northeast area, which is located not far from Laos and Cambodia, is even bigger than one of his branches in Bangkok. I think phenomena like this never happened in the past, but it's taking place vividly. So I would say that with the arbitrage taking place, I believe that not all the Asian entrepreneurs can do what they want to do. They have to be specialized in certain sectors. I think the government made it very clear that with the rising minimum wage up to $10 per day for Thai workers, it means that manufacturing base that depends on low-cost labor will have to move elsewhere. We have to be relocated to neighboring countries. And that also would provide new opportunities for our neighboring countries. Thai companies will have to move upward, create more value added. And that is the key. We cannot be specializing in all. There are a number of arbitrage taking place, apart from labor, capital, and so on and so forth. But I want to emphasize that the stock exchange is now playing a bigger role in fundraising. The turnover on the SET has been averaging at $1.5 to $2 billion a day. The size that, I would say that is quite enormous compared to our turnover in the past. And it has been persistently high. We started to see large block transactions. At the same time, a lot of arbitrage taking place. A lot of companies start to use the financial instruments to take advantage of fundraising. The multiple on the SET has started to rise from 4 to 5 times at the lows, after the Lehman crisis, up to 13, 14 times. Companies start to look at infrastructure funds, property funds, and try to sell their assets, get rid of their non-core assets, raise money, and then use the money for capex, capital expansion. This is taking place consistently. And I think with the mechanism putting in place, I believe that the capital market will grow. Right now it's bigger than GDP, and probably it will become much bigger. I think Thailand eventually would be a hub of several neighboring listings of several overseas companies as well, as I can witness. Apart from different opportunities in investment banking and in investment, what I want to add is that education is the key. I think none of the panelists have touched on education. So far, we haven't seen any serious investment in education, particularly from overseas accredited colleges. Of course, some of the names have been attached to local universities, but no serious investment has been done so far. In Thailand, of course, and I'm sure that in several other countries within the group. I think this is one area that the school should explore and encourage. I think we are, with the huge growth that is taking place, we are running short of skilled labor, managerial types of workers. I think we need additional training, serious training, not only just executive training. I think this is a very big opportunity for education. Apart from that, I think people talk about infrastructure, auto parts, agricultural products, retail, construction materials, industrial estates, logistics, tourism, healthcare, and so on. We happen to have second largest healthcare group after IHH in Malaysia, BGH. I think this is also a new arena that is opening up for investors as well. I think M&A opportunities will be immense. My clients, basically, I cover most of the big clients in Thailand. They are looking out because the fundraising cost is very low. Interest rates also at all-time low, more or less. And people are willing to lend. Thai wealthy individuals also start to look out with the liberalization of Thai Central Bank to allow local people to invest overseas. I see Thai people start buying into shares of listed companies in the US, Japan, and Korea, Europe, and so on. A bunch of friends have end up owning Apple shares, Bank of America, which performed extremely well last year, up 120%, if I remember it correctly, so on and so forth. And started to see Thai people buying up property in London as well. Very good example. And they have gone far ahead of government-related enterprises. So I would end my conclusion that I believe that Southeast Asian will provide excellent opportunities going forward. That's number one. But one thing we have to remind ourselves is that we have to eliminate some mistrust among ourselves. We have to cooperate. We have to make sure that we cannot be specialized in all the sectors ourselves. We have to look at selected sectors that we are good at and let our friends handle the rest. That is my message. Thank you.
Thanks to all our panelists. It's very much a deep insider's view of very complex issues, and I think it has been very, very enlightening. I just wanted to raise one general issue, but I want to leave time for questions from the larger audience, our board members and the larger audience. We have about 15 minutes for questions. The issue I want to raise, just to set this up, is I liked everything that was said, but it seems to be an argument about a rising tide that is lifting all boats. And I think one of the interesting questions is, and I think people have spoken to this, but the interesting question is, what happens if and when the tide recedes? And so the thing I want to raise here is, to continue our discussion, is what are some of the barriers and risks that we see that we need to be aware of? Many of the speakers talked about it. And then I think what Azman talked about was this idea of complementarity, and what are some of the sort of the architectural things one could do across these diverse national entities that might and take advantage of complementarities, and what are the sort of limitations that are best left alone. So with that, let me open up to the audience, anybody want to raise any questions? Yes, there's a question in the back. There's a microphone, 1 or 2 microphones, I believe, that are around. So while we're getting the microphone, would our speakers like to speak to this issue of barriers to creating this great integration across the 10 ASEAN countries? And while the mic comes in.
I think overall, all the government of ASEAN very committed, okay, very committed to implement the ASEAN community by 2015. And also for economic community, I think we moved from January 2015 to December, and that it's been decided, been agreed upon in Phnom Penh during the last ASEAN summit. So the ASEAN community will be implemented by 2015, not January, but December, but 2015. I think the issues that that Dr. Singh raised, the challenge would be each country will still try to defend itself. Mm-hmm. Like Khun Kiet said, the trust, the mistrust, that's still an issue that needs to be resolved in ASEAN. I mean, ASEAN community is great, big market, but each country has its own population that we have to serve. Right. So the barrier is going to be there, whether you like it or not, will be there. So that I think that's the major issue is the mistrust need to be taken out, need to be resolved, and then everyone need to not to be specialized like Khun Kiet said, have something to do. If not, if it's, for example, Cambodia, if we open up and then our people has no jobs, the people will not be happy. So obviously, we need to defend our position also vis-a-vis other ASEAN member states. So I think that's a major issue.
Thank you very much. Yes, please.
Tan Sri Zeti, Tan Sri Azman, Dato. I think one of the barriers or opportunities is in talent. I just want to bring that. And, the area I can speak with some experience. The globalization of talent and information are moving in a synchronous way, and it's a finite pool, and all the things that we talked about, will not happen without the talent. And because of the shortage of talent, we really need to look at it in a freer sense. To give you an example, I mean, the last 7 years I've been based in Shanghai still. Shanghai has a population of, 20 million, and it's actively encouraging foreign population to come in. There's upwards of 20, 30,000 French, German, Americans in Shanghai. In the aftermath of the Fukushima events last year, we were, informally approached by the Shanghai government, and not the Chinese government, Shanghai government, that, look, are there opportunities to bring talent from Japan? Now that there's a radiation, can we bring Japan across to Shanghai? So, the talent pool is global. It's not just limited to nationality because of the way information and technology works. So it is really an area that we need to take a very free outlook towards.
Thank you, Dr. Singh. I think whilst there are barriers, I think we have to be more pragmatic in terms of our approach to implement all these initiatives. And I think in the case of ASEAN, we must recognize that there are some countries that will feel that they're not ready for certain things. And if we're going to wait for everybody to be ready, we're not going to get anywhere. So ASEAN countries have taken that pragmatic approach. So we've seen it in the case of the ASEAN exchanges. We were talking initially with the key ASEAN 5 countries, but Indonesia decided that they're not ready, and they did not participate in this. So, but it's okay, because Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand, and others were ready, so they actually proceeded with it. And as and when Jakarta is actually ready, it'll come onto the platform. Likewise, in the case of the ASEAN Banking Integration Framework. So I think the idea would be to provide the framework, and as and when countries are ready, they actually opt in into the framework. Thank you.
So I really like both Abdul's and Excellent Shantol's comments, because what we're talking about are winning business models. You're talking about exemplars, and Azman also talked about that, exemplars that define what the future could look like, because otherwise it's too complex a set of issues. I think we have the microphone. Sorry, would you want to say something? Okay, yes, please, question from the audience.
Assalamu alaikum. Good morning. My name is Sharifa Bakali. I'm from Khazanah Investment Bank. I think one of the issues that I would like to pose to the panels would be the issue of transparency and investor protection. Now, as investment bankers, and as what we have seen today, there's ample opportunity in investing in ASEAN. But a lot of investors that we speak to, the main issue that they bring up is lack of sufficient credit information and how efficient the judicial system is. While in Malaysia, we are in our own debate about increasing transparency, I just want to know what the ASEAN countries are doing to promote transparency in your own countries. Thank you.
Yeah, can I address some of that? I mean, at the start, I think there was a reference to, I believe World Economic Forum. Davos ranked Malaysia, this is a market I'm most familiar with, very highly, not just highly, but very highly. I believe
I mentioned 12 out of 183.
12 out of 183 in terms of corporate governance, minority protection, and so on and so forth. I think we're very proud of that, because central bank plus other securities commission, I mean, these are some of the lessons or accusations that came about from the 97-98 crisis about so-called crony capitalism and so on and so forth. I think we were not happy with that, but nonetheless, we went in and did stuff around the code of corporate governance, Khazanah that I head. I think we have what we call a government-linked company transformation program, and one of the key components, something called a green book, that goes out and push things like corporate governance. And I think from our lady from Kananga would know that here the issue of minority watchdog, transparency, corporate governance. Certainly, this is the quiet revolution that's been taking place the last 15 years. I think the improvement, and certainly banks, I think under both BAFIA and other statutory and supervisory measures. So I think to me, and we see this across the region actually. Indonesia, for example, very, very tight. If anything, we're building highways. One of our companies are building highways in Indonesia, and frankly, we have some issues about trying to fund this, because our banks, whether CIMB or Maybank, have a problem trying to lend to this, what we think is a very bankable project, because there are limits about so-called intra-group lending. And intra-group has been taken to be a very wide, just one oil and gas project by Petronas, for example, would take up the whole limit. But we need to understand Indonesia's pathway and experience because of the events leading up to the 98 crisis. I think clearly there was a lot of lending intra-company and so on and so forth. So I think those are the kind of barriers, if you like. But the tide is certainly going, very, very clearly going that way, and it's, it's a huge force, and it's not facing many immovable objects in the way, so to speak. What happens if the tide recedes? I think clearly, this is not emerging markets in its classical sense anymore. These markets have emerged already. We've gone through several rounds. I think famous case of, brokers who remember the taxi company called Steady Safe, I believe. This was a taxi company that went completely bust in Jakarta, in a very celebrated case in the 98 cases. You don't see these cases anymore. I think Singapore, has brought in listings from China and so on and so forth. But today you see more lack of transparency and problems in the West, frankly. Dean, I think this is quite clear. I think America and others are grappling through these issues. So to me, that's less of an issue. Talent is a very major issue, which I think Charles and indeed Concat raised. And in fact, I'm glad to see in this circle here up front, there's actually two Khazanah alumni, Ronnie and Sasibai. So we practice, a talent practice. If they have to leave, they leave, but we keep in touch. You know, we have a very active alumni, I think, right, Sasi? Ronnie, and you know, I think not just Khazanah, but I think certainly Bank Negara, you know, companies, Malaysian regional multinationals, or indeed increasingly global. I think we did, you know, institutions, if you see talent coming in and talent practices, I think certainly have to respond. The growing your own timber part, the education part, I think certainly we're pushing, you know, thus far 5 years, very successful education hub in Iskandar, down south, and you know, major global education institutions are building. We hope University of Philadelphia and Wharton should consider. I believe you have some tie-ups in Singapore, or at least you used to under the Management University and others. So, because Southeast Asia is, you know, peaceful, safe, welcoming, connected to the rest of the world, the weather is good generally. I think we've debunked the notion that you can't have good governance in the tropics. I think this is quite clear. You know, so it's all there. So certainly some barriers, but that's, the tide is, you know, the tide may recede, but the barriers are receding faster. Thank you.
I'd like to address the transparency that the question that you raised. I think for Cambodia, we just promulgated the anti-corruption law, and every year the government official had to declare the asset. By the end of this January, everybody must declare. So every year we declare our asset. So that you will see the improvement in that area. In terms of investment protection, our investment law has the investment protection in there. And in addition to that, Cambodia also signed bilateral agreement with 30 other countries to protect each other investment. So that also will help the private sector. In terms of legal framework, I think we also are working to improve our judiciary system in Cambodia to make it more independent, so that the private sector can feel comfortable doing business in a country. But so far, Cambodia never have not nationalized any company or take over the business from the private sector. One example, give you the example. In Cambodia, our air traffic control system is privatized, and it's invested by the Thai company from Thailand called Samat. During the visit of the former Prime Minister Thaksin to Cambodia, one of these engineers in that company provided information of his flight to the Thai government, which in the process of arresting Thaksin, if you will. So the Cambodian government arrested the Thai engineer and took over the operation of the traffic control in Cambodia, only 1 month, to ensure the national security of Cambodia is not breached. But after that, we turned it back over to the Thai company without losing $1, because every expense during 1 month must be approved by the private company from Thailand. So we turn over back after 1 month. So to show that we cannot take over the business from the private sector, that to ensure that you can invest in a major infrastructure in Cambodia on a BOT basis. Our airport in Cambodia is on a BOT basis. A lot of power plant in Cambodia on a BOT basis, because the legal framework is there, the investment protection is there. Thank you.
Maybe one last, would you like to comment? And then one last question before we...
Just want to add one short note on transparency about Thailand. I think the transparency issue has been put on the very top agenda by the SEC of Thailand. There are a lot of number of penalties that could be implemented if people violate the law. For instance, if the inter-transaction is bigger than certain size, then you need minority shareholders' approval. And everyone who are engaged in the, let's say, investment banking and brokerage business have to make sure that they follow the law strictly. If they do not, then the licenses could be revoked. There's one particular case. Actually, there are so many cases where brokers were penalized and their name were made public. Similar to investment bankers, they have number of points that can be deducted if they misbehave. And If they running out of point, then the whole company could be suspended. So I think the Thai government, the Thai SEC is taking this issue very seriously. And also, one thing I want to add is that in every research paper covered by our analysts, we have to more or less state clearly, what sort of level of transparency a company is. I think just to make sure that the public is fully aware. Thank you.
Wonderful, and thank you for that. Maybe one last question from the audience. Any more? Okay, well, let me then just, in the interest of time, oh, there is one. Okay, sorry. Yeah.
Since you haven't had too much from the audience, very interesting dialogue that we've had this morning. One of the issues, of course, physical integration is a lot easier to see. The regulatory integration becomes a lot more difficult to actually fathom. And one of the questions that I have actually is on banking. As we hear that integration is going to become more important, banks will have to become larger, they'll have to go regional. And so what will be the regulatory framework? Are we going to expect Bank Nagara, for example, to come up with a whole slew of new regulations? Are we going to see more bank consolidations? And that's a question that I'd just like to put to the audience.
Clearly a very broad question. Perhaps we get one or two responses quickly.
Well, being the banker here, now I think it's very clear that each regulator will regulate the banking sector in their respective markets. So each one of us are licensed in the respective markets, whether as foreign branches or whether as locally incorporated entities. So whilst each regulator will have their own set of rules, but they all subscribe to the common principles on Basel and so on. So when it comes to capital adequacy and so on. Now, there have been a lot of debates about how you regulate or supervise banking groups like ours. But the regulators have come together and they've established, among others, supervisory colleges where within the ASEAN countries, for example, last year, so we presented to Bank Nagara, and Bank Nagara organized the other regulators from MAS, from Bank Indonesia and so on together, so that a number of the common issues are actually surfaced. So I think there are a number of ways how the regulators actually got together, and I don't see that as an issue at all. When it comes to capital adequacy, obviously, we're all subjected to the Basel III, and I think while some people debated about it, Europe and the States in particular have decided not to adopt some parts of it. I think many Asian regulators have moved on, embraced it, and prepared the respective entities for the new framework, basically. So people like us at Maybank, for example, we proceeded a few months ago to raise additional capital to make sure that we are fully prepared to comply with the higher capital requirements under Basel III. Thank you.
So let me just conclude. Yes, Dr. Zeti. Yeah.
Just take one line after that.
Could I just have Dr. Zeti?
Was that the two-hander you wanted to follow up?
Just a quick word. In terms of, for example, bank consolidation, recently we saw a situation in Indonesia where the regulators did not allow them to change the name of the bank. Now, is this something that's going to change? How does Malaysia react to that?
Right. Well, first of all, before commenting on this issue on regulatory integration of regulations within the ASEAN region and Greater Asia, I did want to propose maybe to have another round of taking questions, because to give the opportunity of some of the other members just to give very brief interventions, and then to let the panel sort of conclude. Maybe we would extend the time a little bit for that purpose. Now, coming back to the integration of regulation, well, first of all, perhaps the regulators in the region have been working in the background to put this in place. First, surveillance, and then looking at risks and vulnerabilities in the region for financial stability. We have, since 2006, a monetary and financial stability committee made up of deputy governors. And we also have working groups that work on harmonization of regulations for the East Asian region. And then we are developing in a very advanced stage for an integrated crisis management framework. And this is whether if we have an imminent crisis, that is disruptions in financial markets or failure of a systemically important financial institution, we have a integrated mechanism to address this very quickly and preemptively. So we have already thought of these issues long before they happen. In other words, during the good times, we are putting in place these structures and mechanisms. And what we always felt is, as regulators and central banks, we have come together and to become a very cohesive and close network. And what we want is for the private sector to do the same. So, but for us, we will just put the enabling environment. And one of the enabling environment is macroeconomic stability and, of course, financial stability. And this work on harmonization, cross-border surveillance. And for Malaysia, I just want to inform everyone that we were very fortunate that we made it when, before the parliamentary session closed in December, that a new act for the financial sector has been put in place. And this act accords us powers to do cross-border resolution and cross-border activities with other central banks and to collaborate with them. And just to give you one example of new areas where central banks have come forward, and we have already signed with Thailand and Singapore, that when our banks want to obtain liquidity, they can pledge instruments that are issued by other sovereigns within the Asian region and other central banks. So that is an advanced stage forward already in dealing with management of liquidity, which is a big issue in like Europe and the US and UK. So we have already gone to the frontier. We learned and observed all the lessons that we learned not only during the Asian crisis, but the current global financial crisis. We want to be well positioned to be able to deal with these issues as when they emerge. So perhaps we can get a few comments, especially from the circle here or from the outer group, to just give their views or raise issues, and then to let the panel make closing remarks.
Questions from the audience? More questions? Or from our board members here, more issues you might want to raise? If there's a question here.
Assalamu alaikum and good morning. I'm Sophie Mathur from Linklaters. I had a question for the panel, just to get the panel's views on Myanmar, because clearly that is a new ASEAN member that is getting a lot of interest by foreign investors, and they're opening up. And I think we feel like there is history in the making. So I'd be very interested to hear the panelists and others' views on that. Thank you.
Well, again, I think Myanmar is a very exciting place for the private sector to consider to invest. But I would say that it might take 10 years. This is experience that just like in Cambodia. When we opened up, it opened up in 1993, 94. It took us 10 years to put things in place. The infrastructure, labor force, regulation, and so on and so forth. So I think it's there, the opportunity is there for Myanmar, but it will take some time for them to really put in place all the necessary legal framework. And also, when you go into the country, you just open up, just like in Cambodia at the time, Vietnam. Be careful who you're dealing with. Because each one of the people that you deal with in Myanmar, in Cambodia, in Vietnam, who said, come to me. I can help you with everything. Be careful. They will take you to the cleaner quick. Okay? So when you go to Myanmar, go to Vietnam, go to Cambodia, just open it up. Please look for a proper partner that you can trust, that have the same chemistry, a corporate chemistry as you before you do business with them. In the West, normally you do a lot of analysis, and then you're looking for a partner. But in Asia, you look for the right chemistry, the partner first, and then do the analysis where you can go ahead to do the business with that person. So be careful with who you deal with. And the project that you want to invest in those countries, please make sure it's a winning project, both for the government and also for the private sector. If you want to take the government to the cleaner, eventually the government will take you to the cleaner too. Thank you.
I'd like to implement Dr. Zeti's suggestion, which I think is a very good one for each panelist to perhaps just speak for a minute or two with some closing thoughts. So let me start with you, Shantol, in the same order.
Well, again, I think that the opportunity for private sector is huge in ASEAN. So I encourage you to really invest in the infrastructure. Because when we talk about ASEAN community, if we do not have a good infrastructure, like connect ASEAN together, we cannot move. We cannot move to the ASEAN community. So when we talk about ASEAN connectivity, we talk about physical infrastructure, transportation, ICT, energy that you mentioned, education, tourism sector, culture sector. We're committed, the Cambodian government and the rest of ASEAN committed to make this ASEAN, a successful ASEAN community. But the private sector need to participate. You must be there with us. We cannot do it alone. So please come to us, open-minded, proactive. Come to us to tell us that this is a good project, a viable project, because we cannot and we do not have the capacity to do so. Your private sector need to come up with the bankable project. We also do the same thing, but we are very limited in terms of expertise, the know-how. So we rely on private sector tremendously to move the economy of ASEAN forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me reiterate my optimism about ASEAN Economic Community come 2015. I think it's very promising indeed. And things are happening already, moving towards that direction. And I also like to reiterate the fact that for ASEAN to become prosperous, it is important for ASEAN to be supported by a number of well-connected, well-distributed regional banks that operate in all these countries. And whilst I did say that the banks must follow the customers, but many customers actually follow the banks. So once we are there, then suddenly we see a lot of our Malaysian and Singaporean and Indonesian customers wanting to go into Cambodia and the rest of the countries. On Myanmar, we are also very bullish about Myanmar. The rate of change happening over the past 20 months now has been unprecedented, and I think they will continue to open up. 64 million people over there, and it's a country which is short of major infrastructure, and therefore lots of investment opportunities over there, whether it's in telecommunications in particular, roads, energy, and so on. But like any other investors, I'm sure you're all aware of the risks that may come with it. And within that context, Excellency's Chantol's comment about being wary of the risk is also very important. But having said that, we are optimistic. We have a representative office in Yangon. We hope they can convert that into a branch, but we don't have the permission for now from the Myanmar authorities. But at the time when it's permitted, we'll be happy to operate full-fledged banking operations in Myanmar. Thank you.
Yeah, I just like to reiterate my earlier remarks and maybe add one or two more. first of all, maybe on Myanmar, I think just address that. I think, yeah, the macro opportunity is very clear, and not just clear, it's very exciting. I mean, you can measure the increase in rates in hotel rooms in Rangoon, in Yangon alone will tell you, as a kind of a proxy indicator of the level of interest and excitement. The issue obviously is how to navigate that at the micro level. Like Maybank, I think our companies are there or thereabouts on the ground, along with practically everyone else, I think, looking for the right opportunities. We note, interestingly, I don't know whether the audience picked up, I think the Chinese, for example, are building a dam in northern Myanmar. I think this has been put on hold, I believe. I think partly because I think Excellency's point about making sure that these projects work for both, on the financial spreadsheets as well as on the ground in what it means to the host country. So really that's part of navigating this in micro terms. The Japanese are building a big, together with Myanmar parties as well. Thai parties, I think, are in there quite active, building roads. I think Malaysian companies, for example, recent announcements already public on the power sector, for example, IPPs going in. So multiple fronts, no issue. I think to note that ASEAN as a region, when the world called to isolate Myanmar, we did not. I think we were very much at the forefront of basically, keeping lines open, having a conversation and drawing them in to the community. And I think this should be perhaps remembered in terms of, we don't believe in sanctions and stuff like that. And I think underlying what Excellency Shantol and others have said is that we grow, we're diverse, we have our own sovereignty, each of the countries, but yet I think this is a region for centuries and hundreds of years, even maybe a millennium, that has actually prospered on working, trading, investing in each other, and so on and so forth. And I think it'd be interesting, Charles, to track talent movement within this, the history of talent movement in ASEAN, I suppose, which is a cultural history in some ways. So if 2005 we were 8 out of 10, I think now probably more for various reasons that we are bullish. ASEAN, I think, is an unstoppable force already coming. Challenges are there, barriers, but I thought we've all made the case that sure, but these are manageable, and there are many examples at government to government, regulator to regulator, business to business, people to people levels of this thing happening. And I think on that score, I think whoever does not, like a few years ago, or maybe 10 years ago, companies that could get by not having a emerging market strategy, or an Asian strategy, or China strategy. Today, all companies have that. I predict in the next 3 years, anybody who matters, whether you're a company or a government, or a multilateral organization, or indeed an education institution, we better have an ASEAN strategy, because I think this is going to be part and parcel of the world for the next years, many years to come. Thank you.
Well, I agree with the panelists that we are very bullish on the outlook of ASEAN. But talking on the positive note, I see the whole place roaring. Speaking to a number of top business leaders in Thailand who have business interests across Asia and Europe, the conclusion is that if the momentum keeps on moving like this, in the next 4 years, the whole area could make a big leap going forward. We could move up one step up on the ladder of economic development, which is very clear. But at the same time, we probably have to look at some of the smaller scales business enterprises that consist of over 90% of the number of business units within ASEAN group. They also represent more than half of the workforce within these ASEAN members. I think it's a big and challenging task for the government and central bank and planning departments to make sure that these business enterprises can survive in the longer term. Of course, a number of policies have been implemented to help them during the transition period. But the guidance has to be within the right direction, within the norm, value, and culture of respective countries. This is a very big, challenging job for all the members within the group. Talking about Myanmar, my motto is that you should be a bit late than too early. We have witnessed several examples in the past. When Russia opened up, I was working at Baring Securities in the old day as a head of research at that time. People were flocking in. Of course, everything saw up and collapsed afterwards. India opened up. I was writing research on India at that time. That was a long time ago. My whole team was sent there to investigate the prospect of India market. We couldn't find a single place for our analysts to stay. Hotel rates and all that, just moved to the sky because of shortage of infrastructure, reasonable hotel rooms, and so on. Vietnam, we have seen example, Cambodia, speculation in property, skyscrapers, and so on. Myanmar is the same. One of the directors of my firm owns, let's say, a top hotel in Myanmar, Chatrium, Bangkok Bank related family. He told me that he used to charge $30 a night for his hotel room, but now he's charging $250. And of course, there's not enough room for everyone. So you can see a big change. Private banker from Switzerland told me that one of his mandate is to look for nice colonial government office buildings in Myanmar and convert into boutique hotels, because he believes that within the next 5 years, there will be no 5-star hotel in Myanmar. So there will be a big opportunities there. Of course, I think people have to be patient, and I do not want to jump the gun too quickly. Also, there's a bunch of problems like power shortage and so on. Things that need to be sorted out within a number of years, not in short term. Thank you.
I want to just end by saying that I came in bullish and I leave even more bullish. So thank you for your deep insights. Let me turn over to Dean Sam Lundquist.
Well, let me conclude our session with thanks to the panelists for sharing insight and wisdom. It was terrific. And for attendees and the audience, our goal was to have a dialogue here that you would find enriching, and I hope that we have achieved that goal. And thanks to the media for being here. I hope that some of what we've done is newsworthy. Let me just close very quickly with some thoughts and reactions from the Wharton School perspective. And I want to open with the comment that Konggyat said, which is just how essential education is in this dialogue. And as an educational institution, we're reminded that one of the things that happens every day at our school is asking ourselves this very question of how can we make our resources available to various regions of the world to be useful, to help educate and train people who are in decision-making positions or who will become executives in a way that becomes effective and allows them to help improve economies and situations around the world. So we're delighted to be part of that conversation. We're honored to have that opportunity to have that dialogue with people. And I want to just leave you with a quick thought about the way in which the Wharton School builds its strategic plan so that you understand how it fits into this conversation. Really, there are 3 pillars to that plan. One is global initiatives, which Dr. Singh oversees at the school. And that's essentially, again, how do we make the resources of the Wharton School available around the world? For this region, you'll be interested to know that indeed we've been instrumental in helping to create and launch the Indian School of Business. Likewise, also mentioned was the Singapore Management University. Wharton was a key part of the founding of that university, and it's thriving now. And also with the very exciting plans that we're developing a Penn-Wharton center in Beijing that will have the opportunity for Wharton resources to become more widely available in China and the region as well. The second is social impact, and that's really based on this notion that strong economies lead to strong societies. And so what good can business schools and Wharton specifically provide in terms of helping foster healthy communities through strong economies? In the States, we're launching a new public policy initiative that is really meant to directly insert the resources and the knowledge of the Wharton School into, in our case, Washington, D.C., so that policymakers are better informed through financial literacy to make policy decisions that will help improve economies. And then lastly, innovation, which is a very interesting topic and one that the Wharton School is being more aggressive in terms of helping organizations and institutions think about how they manage change and how they manage risk in a way that helps them as organizations and institutions make the right choices. That when good ideas come down their way, it's a very difficult discussion and decision to rationally understand what outcomes you are seeking around how to make choices against those opportunities. And so in this day and age that we're also fortunate to live in, with change happening so rapidly thanks to technology and innovation, there are a lot of those choices to make, and how organizations manage that is something that we're strongly interested in. So with that, thank you again for your time. We look forward to our future interaction with all of you, and wish you the best for the rest of the day.
I also wanted to thank the panelists and the moderator and Wharton in particular for partnering with us to organize this event. And I did want to also mention that for us, our motivation also was to bring to the table the emerging economies so that we would be better understood, and in particular ASEAN, because there's so much focus, as I mentioned earlier, on the large, and we believe small is also beautiful, and very important to recognize our role in Asia and in the global economy. And that brings to the point that was raised just now on small and medium-scale enterprises, that while we talk about multinationals and global corporations and so on, we must not forget that the larger part of the business community in our economies. And so the financial inclusion and the economic inclusion agenda is very important. And within ASEAN, I just want to mention also, we have the core ASEAN, which are perhaps the more developed emerging economies, but we have regional inclusion as well to bring and bring with us as we progress forward the other economies within our group. So the inclusion agenda is not only important at the national level to bring in small and medium-scale enterprises into the economic mainstream, but also as a region, so that we become cohesive and we will progress together. So once again, thank you to everyone. Now, I just have to mention one small thing when we conclude this meeting. I still am and will be a person who walks very fast, and others find it very difficult to keep up with me, as my staff will tell me, because I walk very fast. But unfortunately, early this year, I have injured myself. I have a fractured ankle, and therefore everyone is going to walk faster than me. So in case you notice that I am on a wheelchair, it is because I have fractured my ankle actually in 2 places. And I will be in a cast for the next 3 weeks. So some of you, I may not have the opportunity to walk up to you, to talk to you. Please understand, it's because my mobility now is restricted. So once again, thank you to the panel members, the moderator, and to Wharton for this. Thank you.